This week, over a few beers in the shed, we take on a subject that splits the four-wheel drive community: old versus new. We've got awesome prizes to give away for the best tips, four-wheel drive fails, and viewer rigs of the week. Plus, we answer your questions and talk all things auto with our good mate Rocket Rod. From our shed to yours, this is the place for all us four-wheel drivers to stay connected 24/7. It's going to be a huge show, so let's dive into it.
Well, welcome to another episode of Beers in the Shed. And this week, for a little bit of change of scenery, I've got the 79 in the backdrop. Just finished changing all the oils in the 79. And I haven't wheeled this thing too hard, but you'd be surprised how much mud gets in those diffs. I've still got the smell of diff oil just about everywhere around here. But I want to say a big thank you for joining into Beers in the Shed. We've had a huge response to this show. It's been absolutely monumental. In fact, all our social media streams have been nothing short of blowing up over the last week. In the last month, we've had over 5 million views on YouTube, which is absolutely phenomenal. Our Tasmanian episode, the one where we went down to the $1,000 track, part 2 actually got #1 on trending Australia-wide on YouTube, which is phenomenal. And I say a massive thank you to everybody who supports this channel, because without you guys, I'll tell you what, I'll be still in there changing diff oil, there's no doubt about it. The other cool thing, our Instagram and also Facebook have been blowing up over the week. There's been so many views combined. When you put all your views together and all your comments, there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are addicted to this show. In fact, our YouTube channel has actually been officially classed the #1 four-wheel driving and overlanding YouTube channel in the world. Not just Australia, the whole world. So a massive thank you for everyone who supported us through this journey. And we're only just beginning too, so we've got a stack of really cool content coming up. Speaking of stack of good content coming up, you're going to hear from a bloke right now. Graham, are you on the phone, mate?
Mate, am I on the phone? Not only am I on the phone, I'm on the beers, mate. How are you?
Yeah, cheers, mate. Welcome to another episode. Your shed is looking better than ever. You spend a fair bit of time down there, don't you, mate?
Mate, I'd like to tell you that I don't do beers in the shed that often, but it'd be a bold-faced lie, mate. I'm down here every afternoon having a couple of beers.
Funny you say that, mate. Since we started doing this this show, Beers in the Shed, I've been coming down every afternoon just for practice, you know?
You've got to practice, mate. Practice makes
play
perfect.
A few darts, drink a few beers, and every now and again, yeah, look, because my missus will be from upstairs, she'll be like, Shorto, come up, you know, and I'll just grab a hammer, get the biggest block of wood, hit that hammer really hard on the block of wood and just yell something out, and then she doesn't bother me for another hour or so. It's fantastic.
Yeah, practice makes perfect, and Beers in the Shed, there is no better way to go. Now, speaking of which, last week, mate, didn't we open an absolute can of bloomin' worms, mate? Best four-wheel drive ever made. I mean, how many comments do we got? Thousands.
Thousands. So many, man.
A lot of people getting behind the big GU, as you can expect. In fact, 99% of people were getting behind the big GU. There were a couple of people saying the 80.
I barely saw 5 comments, mate, talking about Nissans, but anyway.
So, there were a few more suggestions that we didn't mention. Sir Jolly said, well, the car behind me, wouldn't the D-Max have one of the most reliable modern TD engines? And I can't dispute that. We have put this poor old beastie here through hell and back, and engine has never even missed a beat. It just keeps on going. So, yeah, he's on the money there.
And mate, we had another question here from Christopher Whitehead. What's a better way to get a great rig? Spend $30,000 on a nearly new rig, or spend $10,000 on an old rig like an old maybe GQ or an 80 series, and put that extra 20 grand into that vehicle to make it very capable? So, look, I suppose that sort of brings us on to the big topic for this week, because we put a question up on our social media streams, old versus new. Now, that opened another can of worms, and that's, I suppose, where a lot of people are sitting. Like, what do? Do they buy a new vehicle, which is brand spanking new, it's got to be super reliable, there's no doubt about it, or do you buy an old vehicle and put that money you've saved from buying the new vehicle into that old vehicle to make it very mechanically sound? If you look through some of the comments we had, a lot of people saying, I'll take real steel over plastic, fantastic. Old Andy the Farmer. Got to agree with you a little bit there, mate. MX Army, old but gold. Ryan Clark, definitely old. They're made stronger and simple to work on. I've got to agree as well. There's Jocko 4WD. You've probably heard of this bloke, mate. Something tells me he's been sniffing a bit too much diff oil because he likes the bottom one. Is it a Triton? He's a joker, mate. He's a joker.
He's a joker.
And look, another person said old. Harry Gratitude, old unless it's a 79 series, which a 79's pretty much like an old vehicle. That is new, I suppose. So, look, I think a lot of people, their heart is set on old four-wheel drives, and it's probably overwhelming. Probably 80% of people were leaning towards old four-wheel drives over new. I guess I'm going to chime in now and give my 2 cents on this topic. The way I see it, I've got both vehicles. I've got old and new, and then I've got a hybrid of old and new. So I've got just about every sort of combination of four-wheel drives going around. My heart is with old vehicles like a lot of you guys out there because I love old vehicles. They're easy to work on. There's a lot of parts available for them. But I've got to be really honest here and say that old vehicles, they're something to buy if you're a real enthusiast, not so much if you're thinking economically or maybe practically. Probably a new vehicle is definitely the way to go. I think without a doubt, if you look at old vehicles, like what do we love about old vehicles? The fact they're easy to work on. Yeah, they're a lot simpler. There's no doubt about it. The sweet spot for me is around the 80s and the 90s, from Toyota, from Nissan. All the big car manufacturers really built their name in those decades where they put a lot of R&D between those vehicles, and those vehicles were designed to get 500,000 kilometres out of them. There's no doubt about it. They had a lot more metal in the doors. They're engines that just can last. They last. They weren't highly strung. They're usually higher capacity engines. You could probably go onto a farm right now, see an old 40 series, maybe put a new battery in it, put a tank of fuel in it, turn the key, and it'll probably start because those things are just tough as they come, and they needed to be. They needed to be. Look at new vehicles now. They're, in my opinion, new vehicles really, they're highly strung. They make them definitely on a cost and on a budget, and they do cut a lot of corners, I think, and they're not really designed to last as long as some of the older heritage vehicles. But you're getting a vehicle that is near brand new. It's got to last a lot more. Technology has certainly got its place in the four-wheel drive scene as far as I'm concerned. You're seeing smaller capacity engines, and with the advent of, say, common rail diesel, you've been able to get a lot more power and a lot more tunability, a lot more fuel economy out of these smaller displacement engines. So there's a lot of pros and cons for both, mate. And I'll always be a big fan of old vehicles, there's no doubt about it. But if I had to make a split decision right now, I need to take one of my cars to Cape York. I'm going to put the key in that 79 series and drive it up there because I know it's going to get there and I know it's going to get me back, and I'm not going to have any dramas along the way.
There's a lot to be said for that, I think. There's one thing I'd like to bring up too, as someone who's had the good fortune to be able to drive the D-Max here pretty much all over Australia through some pretty horrendous terrain. And what I would like to say, this vehicle here, brand spanking new, never, not once in the years that I've owned and driven a D-Max through some of Australia's worst and harshest environments, has anything that the new vehicle concept, if you know what I'm talking about, not once has a new vehicle ever let me down. Yeah, we've done a CV. CVs are in every vehicle.
Yeah, sure.
You know, we've done a steering arm. They're in every single vehicle. But never once has technology let me down in this vehicle. Never once has the computer gotten wet and shut the vehicle down. In a sense, we've always been protected by the technology in this vehicle. It looks after the engine, looks after the driveline. So you cannot tell me that a new vehicle won't handle the conditions, because I think in 2020 they've come such a long way that the technology in there is really good. So when you look at something old, I was going to point to Shorty, but the fact of the matter is poor old Shorty's right down there and I can't start it at the moment because I've got alternator problems. So let's not talk about that. But let's talk about something, say the GU behind me there. Yeah, I'm constantly working on that thing. There's always something that's got to be done to the bloody thing. This, never need to work on it. And I think there's the gap between older vehicles and newer vehicles these days really is starting to separate. The older vehicles, you've got to put some time and love into them. And as you've said, you've got to be an enthusiast to own one of them. And if you're not, if you just love getting out there and you want to go camping, you want to drive on the beach with the missus, get a new vehicle, because you're not going to have to work on that one over there. I was under it yesterday. I was under the GQ the other day. It's a labour of love. Well,
this is one of those rare occasions, mate. Well, I totally agree with everything you've just said. It's absolutely spot on, and it's a great point. And if we get back to that question from Christopher Whitehead, he had that question. So, what's better? Say you've got the same budget. Now, we're not all blessed to have a budget where we could either buy a new vehicle or spend a lot of money on an old vehicle. Some of us have got no choice but to run old vehicles, and that's cool because you can still get parts around. And like I said, it's if you're buying something from the 80s or 90s, it's typically in the sweet spot for a lot of manufacturers where they're built to last. But say you did have a bit of a budget to throw at an old vehicle. So say you've got 40 grand and you buy maybe an 80 series for 20 grand and you got 20 to chuck into it. Well, there's no doubt about it. You could build a pretty decent truck. You could build a vehicle that is so capable, so reliable that nothing would come near it. But the problem is what you're going to have, unless you replace every single nut and bolt on that vehicle, you're always going to have some sort of issue with that 80 series. And like you said before, mate, you've got to be an enthusiast to love your old vehicles, because get used to starter motors just stopping because they've done 500,000 kilometres. Get used to an alternator stopping. Get used to doing a lot more maintenance on that vehicle just to keep it going every week. So, you know, some old vehicles, you love them to pieces. You've got like an emotional attachment to them, but they sometimes will break your heart. So you got to be prepared for that, mate. But sometimes the best loves of your lives will break your heart. So.
It's so true. It's so damn true. Can we have a look at something we haven't talked about, and that is scenario-based options when it comes to buying a vehicle? Let's stick with your 40 grand. Let's say you've got 40 grand and you are absolutely passionate about rock crawling. You know, you like Jocko. You love getting out on the weekend and tackling the toughest, gnarliest hills in Australia. What are you going to buy?
Well, you're not going to buy a new car because I don't know any new vehicle. You couldn't spend enough money modifying it to do those sort of things when like a GQ or an 80 or a GU would just put some tyres on it and a diff lock and off you go.
And away you go.
You'd be rock crawling that weekend.
All right, well, let's take this one for example then. You've still got that same 40 grand. You've worked hard. You've got a big budget behind you, 40 with a little bit more money to spend on the outside. You want to do that dream lap of Australia. Are you going to go and buy yourself a clapped out old GQ?
I think that's a false economy. When you go and buy a second-hand old vehicle, and you might get it for $15,000, buy a half-decent example, over the course of 1 year using it in the toughest conditions around the country and putting another 20,000 Ks on it, you're probably going to be to the same price. If you do a gearbox, you know, or an engine, there's 15 grand gone. You know, you do a diff, there's a couple of grand. And happens to be you're out at Kununurra, so you're going to pay double. There's 5 grand for that diff, you know, and you're going to have to wait 3 weeks around to get those parts in.
Yep.
That new vehicle's not going to let you down.
Let's now look at one of the other big factors that we don't often think about, and that is no matter how much we think of ourselves as four-wheel drivers, and we all do, the reality is we're not spending 90% of the time four-wheel driving and 10% of the time getting to and from work or zipping around to the shops. It's the opposite way around. We're probably lucky to spend 10% of our time four-wheel driving and 90% on the road. So let's have a look at modern vehicles and just how capable they are off-road, but how comfortable and easy they are to drive on road. They've got heaps of power, air conditioning, they've got steering wheels that turn and the wheels go, they stop, they start. So if you're going to be realistic about it, a new vehicle, is going to do 90% of the four-wheel driving you want to do in it, but then when you're on the road, when you're driving to and from bits and pieces, they're so comfortable, mate.
You got the creature comforts. Now, another one thing that goes with, like, if you're going to be using your new vehicle in the toughest conditions, you will go through some things like bearings, you will go through things like alternators, there's no doubt about it. The older vehicles are just so much easier to work on. A bit of a rule that you and I both got, mate. If you can see the bottom of the floor through your engine bay, it's a vehicle that's good to work on. If you can't see the floor, if there's so much stuff in that engine bay, it's typically a new vehicle. It's a real bugger to work on. And just the other week, I was changing an alternator in the 79. And it was just a real pain, just an absolute real pain. Then I changed one, went around the $1,000 track in the GU, and I had that alternator in and out in about 15 minutes. It was just so easy to work on, and it's just easy to work on, and you got to love that.
So how do we answer this one, mate? I think it's almost a bit of a curly one. I think it's a situational type thing here. What are you going to be using that four-wheel drive for? What are you passionate about? If it's going to the beach to go surfing and fishing, and you don't want to spend your time underneath it in the shed, maybe an old vehicle's not for you. Maybe save your pennies and buy a new one. But if you're the jock of the of the four-wheel driving breed, always out climbing up rocks and doing things like that, maybe an older one is for you. Yeah,
that's true. It really is subjective. My heart is still with the old vehicles, no matter what. Yep. And it's because I'm a sucker for punishment, mate. I will buy an old vehicle and I'll spend 3 times what it's worth on fixing the thing, but I will love it so much. And that's how I get my enjoyment. I love working on cars and I love driving them. And I just like the characteristics of an old truck. They've got a lot of character, mate.
I spent about an hour on car sales the other day and nearly pushed go on a Lada Niva, mate. So I don't need to say much more than that. I've always wanted... See, we had one when I was a kid. We had a Lada Niva out on the milking farm, and it used to tow a trailer around. It went everywhere.
And ever since... it didn't.
It did, and it was poo brown in colour. It was the ugliest truck you've ever seen, mate. But I've had a soft spot for it ever since, and I reckon one day there's going to be a Lada Niva in this shed.
Don't do it, mate. That will break your heart. That absolutely will.
Look, she's been broken before, mate. She'll repair herself. She'll come good. Look,
speaking of getting your heart broken, here's a bloke that needs hardly any introduction, mate. And his name is Jocko. And this week he comes from his shed and joins us with an epic deal.
Hey boys, I hope you're keeping well in isolation, spending plenty of time in the shed like me. Graham, I know you need all the help you can get on the tools, mate, but just keep at it, you'll be right. You talk about old versus new, and I reckon definitely for me, older vehicles are the way to go. I say that because I've only got old vehicles, only one of them's running at the moment. But no matter what four-wheel drive you have, I reckon every single vehicle needs a UHF. I've got this cracking deal from Oricom at the moment. You can get yourself a UHF 310 and a 6.5 dBi antenna for just $199. That's a saving of over $129. The UHF 310 is great because it's so compact. It's only a little bit bigger than a mobile phone, so you can fit it anywhere. It's perfect for a DIY mod at home in the shed right now. They're made in Korea and have a whopping 5-year warranty on the radio and 3 years on the antenna. This kit's usually worth around $329, so I reckon it's an absolute bargain at $199. That's also including free shipping to your door anywhere in Australia. Boys, I'll throw it back to you now. I've got to get back to working on the Luxie so she's ready to outdrive Graham on the next trip, but talk to you soon.
Coming up, folks, we're going to dive into our favourite viewer rigs of the week. We're talking tips and tricks for the trusty old cable tie. We're going to give away prizes and answer your questions, including all things auto versus manual. First up, though, let's check out our fails of the week.
Righto, Sean, I know this is one of your favourite parts of the entire week because you and I have both been here so many times ourselves, both together and separately. And by goodness, haven't we got some absolute crackers this week? And we've got a winner this week that is going to console himself with a $100 Snatch gift voucher. And it's been extremely hard to pick a winner this week because let's just go through a couple of these absolute crackers here, mate. So, have a look at this poor bloke here.
Got the old wonky tyres going on.
Yeah, he's from Michigan. He's decided he's not going to go any further and he's throwing his shoe off.
Maybe the vehicles are different in the US. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be like. Nothing wrong with it. He sent it to the wrong competition, probably.
We got this fella here. He's actually from WA and he's on Wedge Island now. That is notoriously soft and sandy there. What I don't like about that picture is how close he is to the water, mate. That would make me very nervous.
Oh, and you can tell he's down on the low tide mark. He's not up above the high tide mark. That could be dangerous.
There's lots of seaweed there. Yep, get him out. Look at his split. And speaking of a bloke who's down on the low tide mark, have a look at this bloke. He's decided to go yabbying, and he's using his little Suzuki as a yabby pot, mate.
I reckon with that little Zook, mate, you just let those tyres down another 5 psi, and you could drive through the dam and back out the other side.
Well, speaking of Zooks, mate, have a look at this bloke here. He's decided to go mountain biking. He's got the bikes on the roof, and. Well, that's not how it's supposed to look.
No, not at all, mate. He's got the old wide track version. Suzuki
I was going to say it was a wide track. Yeah.
Look at it. That sucks. The old axle spits out the side with the wheel. That's not good at all.
Needless to say, he could have just taken the mountain bikes off and with the two of those mountain bikes up there, hook up a snatch strap and tow that thing back home again. You'd just about be right, wouldn't you? Oh, goodness gracious. Now, this is a mate of mine, Aaron. He sent this in, and I need to just be serious for just 1 second if I can, mate. We'll have a look at the video here, but what's happened is Aaron didn't actually know the bloke, the Jeep driver here. He's come upon this bloke who's stuck in the mud. Now, the guy's already got a snatch strap hooked up, and he said to Aaron, mate, do you reckon you could just give us a quick snatch out of there? And Aaron hasn't even thought about it. He's hooked up the vehicle to the snatch strap to his vehicle, taken off like you would do in a snatch recovery, and the poor bugger has actually attached that to the tie-down point and not to a rated recovery point on the Jeep. It's snapped off and it's gone through the back window, mate. And that thing, it highlights safety first. Check everything. Don't assume anything.
That's exactly right, mate. Luckily, everyone walked away from that one because, tell you what, that's an absolute doozy. Absolute doozy.
Mate, that could have been so much worse. Now, we've got champs here. Now, every now and again when you're out four-wheel driving, you've got to let off a bit of steam, mate. You've just got to let off a little bit of hot air. Have a look at this video. He gets halfway up this hill climb and the radiator says, no, it's not for me, I'm going home.
I must admit, the first time I watched that video, I actually jumped about a foot in my seat. I was like, holy heck, I wasn't expecting that.
Can you imagine being the driver? I reckon you'd need new seat covers, mate. Jeepers creepers, spectacular.
Far out.
We've had to give the winner to Jack here. Old Jack's taken the farm ute. I think he's thought the farm ute can go a little bit harder than it does. And look what he's done to it. He's flooded the old girl.
I just love the fact he's wet from about sort of the high waist down and hands on the hips. He's just not happy.
Oh, he's gutted.
And the fact he had to do the walk of shame back to the farmhouse and get someone in a tractor to come out.
I reckon he would have been buying beers back on that farm for quite some time, mate.
I've actually been there, and that walk of shame, and it's not nice. It's not nice. But look, $100 snatch voucher. That's you better buy yourself a new shirt. You probably ruined that one, no doubt about it.
He needs one after that, mate. Have a look at it. He buy himself a new shirt and a couple of other bits and pieces there. Now, look, folks, we love getting your fails. Now, we do enough failing ourselves. It's time that we really looked at some of yours, and I know you do love sending them in, so we're going to make it a little bit easier for you. When you do put a fail up on Instagram, use a hashtag, because we are looking for these things 24/7. So why not use the hashtag 4-wheel drive 24/7 fails? So hashtag 4-wheel drive 24/7 fails, or 4WD 24/7 fails. And that way we'll be able to find them a lot easier and put them on this little show for you. And hopefully there's none of us, mate. Neither you nor I pop up on this show. We do enough for ourselves.
That's right. We put those on every other Thursday anyway. But
Exactly.
look, that's the thing. We've got literally over the last week probably 200 to 300 fail messages on our Instagram per day. So this hashtag's really going to make it a lot easier. There is a lot, and it's so refreshing to see that, to be honest with you.
Isn't it? Makes me feel a lot better about myself, mate.
It does. We're all in the same boat together. It doesn't matter. Look, those people that have never been stuck, that have never had a big blunder like the ones you've just seen here, they just simply haven't done enough four-wheel driving. That's as simple as that. So this week on social media, we asked the question, the best uses for cable ties. Now, let's face it, every single four-wheel driver out there has a couple of cable ties in the back of their four-wheel drive. In fact, I've gotten home sometimes just on cable ties and maybe a little bit of duct tape too. But for one lucky winner, we've got a set of Terraloom lights we're going to be giving away. So let's have a look at some of the entries that came in this week. Bishop Letty, put them on your mate's swag zippers.
Sean, do you remember when I forget where we were, I think it was somewhere in Tasmania, we're out there with Stew Dog, and he decided he was going to try and prank me by tying my zips together on my swag, but he had one too many beers and only put it through one of my zips, so in the morning I just opened it up.
Yeah, luckily you're a heavy sleeper, mate. I was sitting at the campfire, I thought it was a great idea, so I was egging him on, right? He fell over your guide rope, nearly knocked your awning over, and I couldn't believe he didn't wake up, to be honest with you. And then he still fumbled, and anyway, the joke was on Stu that night.
It was. It's usually the case, to be honest.
Boris, zip tie a rubber toy snake to your mate's ankle while he's sleeping and watch him as he runs a marathon. That's a good one, mate, and I think I might try that, I reckon.
Hey, we've had that happen to us as well. Do you remember when we were in Eli Creek on Fraser Island and that old bloke come running up the river and he had a snake tied to himself with fishing line?
Oh, true, he did too.
Dude,
he did too.
I threw you in front of it. Remember I pushed you in front and ran?
Just get out of there. Heroes don't always wear capes, Graham, I'll tell you what,
That's right, mate. Okay, mate, well, here's an absolute cracker. It comes in from Lime17. I'm actually using this particular trick right now. If your gas struts fail, and mine have on the canopy door of my GU back there, all you need to do, get yourself a cable tie, wrap it around nice and tight at the base of your gas strut, just tight enough that you can move it up and down with your fingers, do it on both gas struts, and you can slide the cable ties down, hold your door open until you can get back home, or get a piece of dowel, as I'm probably going to do, and use that to hold the door open. And can I just show you one other trick, mate? I've got an absolute cracker here. Get yourself a cable tie. There's one there.
Yep.
Your shackles. Everyone keeps their shackles on their recovery points, but occasionally they'll come loose, and you do not want one of these bad boys flying down the highway or getting, you don't want to lose your shackles, basically. Really quick tip. Run that through there, back through there. Do it up with your cable tie. Can't come undone, mate. Look at that. Simple as that. It cannot rattle undone. Absolute cracking tip, that one.
Good way to make sure you've always got your shackles on you. My tip, and you guys might have been watching our show for some time now, might see sometimes in the in-car footage, on my seatbelt, I'll have a cable tie around the top of it. Now, the reason I've got the cable tie up the top is when we're going up really steep things or down really steep things, the seatbelt obviously retracts, but you can't get it back out. So the cable tie stops it from going in. So if I get out of my vehicle, I can always put the seatbelt back on. And I think that's a cool little tip that
the real tip with that one too, mate, is you've got to get it perfect, don't you? Because you don't want to have heaps of slack. You've got to have it just right that you can get it back in again.
That brings us on to the winner. The best use for a cable tie. Darren O'Connor, you've won yourself a set of Terraloom lights, mate. He said, buy a packet of the small coloured ties. When taking something apart, i.e. alternator wires, etc., use them as markers on the wire and terminal so you don't forget when they go back. That is a great tip. That is a great tip. I usually take a photo with my phone, but I don't always remember that, and half the time I just trial and error, and if it starts catching on fire, I've done something wrong. So, Darren, that's a cracking little tip, mate, and enjoy those new set of Terraloom lights for your vehicle. And hopefully you won't need too many cable ties for that one, mate. It's only a red and a black wire. But anyway, mate, if you guys have got any more tips out there, make sure you use the hashtag 4WheelDrive247 tips. So we want to see your tips. There's no doubt about it. Make sure you hashtag that. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.
Absolutely, mate. All right, well, let's move on and have a look at this week's Rig of the Week. Righto, mate, rig of the week, and unfortunately I'm unable to put in either the D-Max or the GU because I would take this one out, hands down, mate. We've got 3 absolute cracking contenders this week, and the winner is going to take home a Milwaukee Impact Driver. Now, that's a pretty bloody good prize, if you ask me.
It's a little 12-volt one, and I use that all the time. It's got so much punch. I've been taking wheel nuts off with it and everything like that, mate. It's classic. I use it all the time.
They're actually remarkably, if you haven't got good wrists, you'll do the old flip around. They're remarkably good. Now, have a look at this bad boy right here, mate. This comes from her Chopped 80 series, and I reckon this one will be right up your alley. Have a look at that, will you?
Hey, I'm Janelle, and this is my 91 Toyota Land Cruiser 80 series.
Janelle has done an absolute credit to herself with her build of this Mint 80 series. It's been chopped into a single cab ute and repainted white to graphite. The vehicle also has an engine swap to a 2003 1HD FTE and fitted with twin stainless exhausts to boot. For accessories, Janelle has fitted a snorkel, a winch, UHF and phone antenna. She's got a 50-inch light bar, bull bar and custom sliders and brush bars front and rear. Now that tray right there is a modified patrol tray fitted with a canopy and dog box. And the rig is sitting on 35-inch tyres with coils, airbags and remote reservoir 5-inch shocks and dampeners. Internally, she's done a conversion to electric windows, which is a neat little touch. She's fitted subwoofers and 10-inch speakers, a centre console cooler, multi-gauge and sat-nav. And on the electrical side of things, there's a 3,000 watt inverter, red arc BC-DC, we've got a water pump and even a hot water system.
That is so cool. That is everything I wish Sooty was. That is, it's clean, it's got all its panels straight. Look, if you want to do a straight swap and maybe throw a carton my way, I'm all ears. That is a beast. Look at it.
Now, here's something a bit different. Have a look at this, Sean. This is a little chopped Prado. It's 4.5-inch lift on 35s. It's got a front locker. Have you ever seen anything like that?
That is cool. That is cool. I just love it when people think outside the square. You know, it's not another built 79 series. It is something very unique, and you know, hats off to you. That is a really cool little build.
I wouldn't mind having that in my shed. I'd be proud to punt that around. I quite like the look of it. But we had to give only one winner this week, and it's gone to Kieran, who has put his heart and soul into this little MQ, mate. Check this out, will you?
Hi, my name's Kieran, and this is my 1986 Nissan Patrol.
If you want to see an example of an absolutely immaculate engine rebuild, then look no further. This beauty has been entirely rebuilt by Kieran with a new genuine head, all Japanese internals, new liners, ceramic coated pistons, manifolds and valves. There's also a billet high flow turbo, rebuilt injector pump, aftermarket intercooler and radiator, oil cooler and remote oil filter, for goodness sake. But Kieran hasn't stopped there, rebuilding the gearbox and diffs and adding a 3-inch intake and exhaust, front and rear lockers, a lift and airbags. For accessories, there's a 160-litre main tank and 70-litre sub, front and rear bar and Nissan rock sliders, a 50-litre water tank, cruise control, and a home-built rear draw system. Internally, Kieran's added an inverter and travel buddy, red arc gauges, a dual battery system, and sound deadening.
Mate, that really is one of the cleanest MQs I think I've ever seen. And when someone goes to the effort to restore it like that and put all the mods on it, it obviously gets driven. It's just a beast of a vehicle and a well-deserved winner of that little impact wrench. Now look, Graham and I both reckon that Janelle's 80 series is absolutely mint. And you know what? We've hit up Milwaukee. And Janelle, you've won yourself an impact driver as well.
Folks, we want to see your rigs. So please use the hashtag so it's easier for us to find. We're going to use the hashtag 24/7rig. Put that with your photos of your rig, your videos of your rig, if you're going to go that far, so that we can find them, and hopefully we can put them on the show here and you can win yourself a prize just like Kieran has.
So we get so many questions across all social media platforms and of course YouTube. And we're going to go through a couple right now, and we've got so many awesome questions that we're going to get to. And I just want to make the point, if you've got a question, just keep them coming in, because we try and get to as many as we can. And we're going to start off this section with Mark Boswava. I've noticed that on your $1,000 track video, you're using the winch controllers through the window. Do you feel that gives you the best access and control? Why not the wireless controller? Truth be told, I actually lost my wireless controller. I'm a big fan of wireless controllers. I use them all the time. But yeah, like I said, I lost that. So the old cable saves the day. This one here from Roderick. Hey guys, with so many deep water crossings on your trips, why do you not use waterproof alternators? You can get fully marine sealed water-cooled alternators, but they use them in the mines all the time, but they're about $3,000 for an alternator. Then you've got to fit it.
Yeah.
So about 5 or 6 times the price of a regular alternator. Look, if you're going to be doing a lot of mud, then I'd say, yeah, make a big upgrade. But look, I go through maybe, with all of the full driving that I do, maybe an alternator once a year. I'll just keep, just doing the typical standard alternators for me because they are so expensive.
Yeah, I haven't got a car that's worth it, mate. It'd be worth twice my bloody vehicles. I can't afford that.
The definition of over-capitalising, mate.
Totally is.
Thomas has got a question. G'day, Graham. Was wondering, what in your opinion is the best beach run in Western Australia?
Thomas, it starts up near Kununurra and it finishes down near Esperance, mate. It's the entire west coast of Western Australia is the best beach runs you'll find anywhere. But if you want something more specific than that, I'm going to say either Cable Beach. You've done that, Shauno. I know you love that little part
cool.
of the...
That's cool.
If not that one, though, I reckon go down the Yeagerup Dunes, across down to Yeagerup Beach, turn and go up to the Warren, cross the Warren if you can, then go all the way down and come up Summertime Track. I reckon that's one of the best beach runs you'll do anywhere in Australia.
I know this fella didn't ask me, mate, but I'm just going to give my 2 cents. If you go down the down to Bigger Up and down to just the What's Up track down there that way, massive big sand dune. Up and down like this, just real soft sand. Be careful, mate. Just cow cup and how's your day looking up? All those sort of tracks. Anything with it up on the end, pretty much is a good track. As long as
you move on to the next question.
Righto. This one here is from Denise. Just wondering, Shauno, if your beers are lasting longer while Graham is in his shed.
What are you
Graham's
saying?
beer budget must have doubled. Look, I've got cold beers on tap all the time, and I'm just loving the fact that I'm not having to share. Isolation, if there's one positive to come out of it, Graham is not stealing my beers. And
it's actually a bit of a negative, if you ask me.
Mate, you must be out of pocket a fair bit now. You got to actually buy your own beers.
I was actually surprised at how much beers cost, to be honest with you. I didn't realise it was that expensive for a carton of beer, but I'm finding out pretty rapidly.
That's right, mate. That's right. And we've had a stack of questions on social medias about automatic versus manuals, and in particular off-road. So I thought, who better to go to? A lot of people want to see Rocket Rod, and have been asking about him on our social media, different platforms. So we check in with Rocket and get him to answer the big questions. Hey, Rocket, how you going, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Just out in the shed doing a little bit of work in the Dirty 30, mate, and I can see you're in the workshop as well.
Yeah, not much different down here. My shed's just a little bit bigger than yours.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Probably a little bit cleaner too. Mate, I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. We've got a couple of guys on the social medias who have been asking us all different auto and manual questions, and I thought who better to answer them is Rocket Rod himself.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
The first one, and this one probably gets asked a heck of a lot, and I'm standing in front of the Dirty 30 now. I've got to admit, this is the first vehicle I've had an auto in for a long time, and I'm absolutely loving it. A lot of people are asking, hey, why did you go on auto, and what's the big difference between auto and manual off-road? So what do you reckon, mate?
Well, I can answer your question for you in a way. It's just that it just took you a long time to catch up to the rest of us before you got an auto. That's all I can say about that. I mean, all I can say is us automatic people, we've been right for an awful long time now. And the manual community as a whole, that they're slowly catching up. But I think, it won't be many trips from now that the whole crew will actually be automatic.
And look, I've only done a little bit of driving now with the 30, but I'm absolutely loving it, mate. It's just a breeze to drive, and I think that's one of the big benefits, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Like, I've been an automatic fan for years now, and it's got nothing so much to do with the business. It's just I'm a lazy bugger at the best of times. So I love automatics. I believe that they're easier to drive off-road. You see me drive some of the extreme stuff. It speaks for itself. They're great in the bush. They're great on hard tracks. There's no such thing as handbrake starts. They're just amazing things to drive. So it makes common sense to me.
Yeah, exactly, mate. That's something I've always been jealous of all you guys with autos. It's just the control you have on, especially the gnarly stuff. You can go ever so slowly and just, put your foot on the brake, let the vehicle sit there for a bit and then just really carefully and safely take off again. I think that control that you got is, you can only really get it in an auto.
Oh, look, I mean, obviously she's a big girl, so without the automatic, I couldn't do half the things that I do as you guys do. So
are we still talking about your vehicle, Rocket, or?
Yeah. Good on you, dirty mind. There's a, You imagine yours. Your car's going to be half the weight of mine. Never alone, Graham's is exactly the same and all that. So, they've got the advantage of the automatic and that as well. But there's no possible way I could do half the things that I do with the weight I do, especially the way this thing lifts wheels and all that, without it being automatic. Basically I've got a throttle and a brake pedal, and that's all I have to worry about. No such thing as clutch, or trying to use the clutch and trying to do clutch starts, or getting over rocks or boulders, or trying to leap up that rock step and everything with an automatic. It's just 10 times easier.
Mate, and if it's easier forward driving, I'm all ears, absolutely. Hey, I've got a couple of other questions that have come in via social media. This one here is from Jordan Downey. What range of vehicles can you convert?
Look, our most common is obviously the 79, 76, 78 series of Land Cruiser. We also do the Nissan GU. We can do the GQ, a little bit more tricky, but we still can do that. We also do an awful lot of like the 80 series. We do an awful lot of 80 series actually. Also the older 79 series with the 1HT FTE engine. And all the way back to the 1HZs we can actually do. We've actually done a lot. All over the world we've actually done an awful lot of kits. But they're the most common ones. The Land Cruiser and the Nissan Patrol range, without a doubt, is our main range when it comes to manual to automatic conversions.
And also the odd Dirty 30 when they pop into the shop every now and again, mate.
Well, let's just say the reason why I didn't put that in the range is because what you have there is possibly one of the rarest beasts in the world. Is that it's the first one to be done, and especially the first one to be done with a 5-speed auto, with a Tiptronic T-bar, with Bluetooth enabled control via an app on your phone.
It's ridiculous, mate. It's ridiculous. I'm still getting my head around it, mate, but it's just, I don't need to worry about that. The thing just drives itself, which is really, really good. Mate, I've got another question here from Nav Life, NZ. Is a lock-up kit a good option when towing big loads?
Without a doubt. We have them available for many models, but not every single model. So there's a couple of models that we don't do. But if you're towing, let me get this clear. When a manufacturer makes the vehicle, they don't take into consideration that you're going to be towing big weights all the time. So therefore, they don't take consideration fuel economies and all that. And there's a couple of models that when they tow, they're incredibly heavy on fuel economy, and the lockup makes a big difference. Like, it saves you so much fuel, and in some cases, particularly things like the 200 series, it'll save you 6 litres per 100 if you're up around the 3-tonne mark. Okay,
that's huge.
A Prado 120 or a 150 that may be towing maybe the 2-tonne mark, they're still getting 3.5, 4 litres per 100 out of it. And it just allows the lockup to actually stay on and work, rather than anything over quarter throttle. The standard engine management system tends to turn the lockup off, anything over quarter throttle, as I said. So you can imagine that when you're towing weight, you're always going to be over that throttle, so you always need it. So obviously towing on road, without a doubt. And the other big thing, which is originally why we actually built the lockup kit for, is engine braking downhill. And a lot of people think, first gear, low range, going down a steep hill. Yeah, sure. The lockup kit does give you full engine braking. It's 100%, just like a manual going down a hill. But we find more of our customers actually use it when they're towing. Once again, they're going down a big hill, a big mountain range, and they've got the load on the back. It just allows them to turn the lockup on, down change into a lower gear, and they're running on the engine brake all the way down like a manual would. They're just not burning the brakes out. You're not getting brake fade in the trailer or anything like that, because you certainly don't want brake trade in a trailer in the wet. I can assure you of that.
I suppose the other thing I'd do, activating the lockup in a lower gear would also bring the temperatures down. Is that true? Yeah,
as soon as let's face it, the torque converter generates 95% of the heat in an automatic transmission. As soon as you turn the lockup on, that obviously clamps that up, not generate any more heat. So therefore the coolers can actually cool down the transmission much easier if the lockup's on. But you can only use the lockup at cruising speed on the open roads, or you're using it for engine brake downhill.
This question actually leads right in to what we were just talking about, really. When should you consider upgrading the auto transcooler on your vehicle?
Right. Actually, I've got one here. I'll just grab one just quickly.
Yep.
I'll just grab one of these.
So,
now,
I know the advice you gave me, mate, was fit the biggest transcooler you can possibly fit and make sure it's right at the front with no obstructions. And that's exactly what I've done here in the 30, mate. I've got a nice big shiny one right at the front there.
Every automatic transmission needs an oil cooler, without a doubt. If your car is a more modern tradie ute, I'll just rattle off some of the ranges. If you're talking about like the Ford Ranger, Prado 150, Mazda BT50, the Colorados, some of the Tritons, and the range goes on. There's an awful lot of vehicles that actually have no auxiliary oil cooler at all. So what they do, they actually run through the bottom of the radiator, so they're actually trying to use hot water to cool hot oil. Now, that has a limited effect. Now, it's certainly great in a car that's got no load. So if you're a tradie ute and you're only carrying a bucket and spade in the back, you're done, you're fine. But as soon as you're going to tow or anything like that, or you're going to put off-road tyres and roof racks loaded up, bull bar, winch, all the rest of it, add all the weight, and then you're going to go out camping. I'm not just talking about four-wheel drive and off-road, but anyway, just tracking it up to the Cape, just the trip from here to the Cape alone. You definitely should get yourself an oil cooler. We definitely have a range. It's one of the first things you fit. Look, they're economical, they're cheap, they're easy to fit, they've got great instructions. You would always turn around and fit an oil cooler. It's probably one of the first accessories that you would ever want to put on a car. There's a few models that come standard with some good ones. But they're normally the vehicles that are built already to tow big weights. It's surprising how the manufacturers know that when people are going to tow weight, they put an oil cooler on. As soon as they think, oh yeah, they're not really going to tow, it's a tradie ute, what are they going to do? They're going to put some, sandbags in the back and concrete and a few shovels and that. They don't really need it, so they don't fit them in there. But over here, we then take that tradie ute, put big weights in it, big tyres, chips, exhaust, whatever and that, and we go off-road, and of course they get hot. So always get yourself a good cooler, and you'll never look back. This one's actually the Amarok one that we use for one of the Amaroks back here and that, because we have them specifically made to suit many models. So they're handy. They're an easy fit, and you should always fit one. Absolutely.
No, that's good advice, mate, because heat, after all, is the #1 killer for an automatic transmission, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, automatic transmission is full of rubber seals. Those rubber seals will eventually go or get hard and go fragile, and they'll crack eventually. And what makes them go hard is the cycle. So from a cold point to the hot point, if it's constantly like room temperature to a very hot point, and you just keep going through the cycles every day, the seals will actually get hard and crack much sooner than something that goes from room temperature and only goes up half that temperature. So therefore the wave is much smaller, the pulses in heat is much, much smaller and closer together. Those seals will last for 30, 40 years. But you get something that gets hot every day, all the time, and gets really, really hot and you're not controlling it, those seals will crack after probably 7 or 8 years. We always used to joke that a taxi never, ever got a hard seal because they never turned a taxi off.
They kept them going. They kept them going
night and day. So
Far out. Well, that's a good advice, mate. And if you ask me, it's cheap insurance as well. If you've gone the money to get yourself, especially like one of those dual cab utes, a brand new one, you've put all like a canopy on it and all the kit ready to work and play sort of stuff. An oil cooler really is cheap insurance to make sure that auto is in tip-top condition. Well, Rocket, I want to say a big thanks, mate, for coming on the show and giving some of your expertise as well, mate. There's a lot of questions that we get through our social media streams, mate, and there's always a stack on automatic transmissions, and you're definitely the bloke to talk to when it comes to everything auto. So thanks again, mate.
No, not a problem at all. It's always a pleasure and that, and I'm just more upset the fact that you and me right now, we're actually supposed to be in the Kimberley.
I know, mate, and that's the thing. I know when you and I have got a trip together, mate, you get Graham in the mix as well, and we just have an absolute ball. So I don't even want to think about that, mate.
I'm looking forward to it, so won't be long now, and we'll catch up soon.
You take it easy, mate, and stay safe, and no doubt we'll catch up soon.
Good on you, mate. Take care.
After chatting with Rocket, I twisted his arm to give all you guys a good deal. And he's done just that. If you jump onto askauto.com.au, for a limited time only, you'll get 10% off lock-up kits and oil coolers. And in fact, nearly all their online range.
Mate, he is a bastion of knowledge when it comes to automatics, and it's always good to catch up with the old mate Rocket, eh?
Absolutely, mate. He just knows so much, pretty much everything there is to know about automatics, mate, and everything there is to know about lifting a wheel in a 79 series. That bloke has got it covered. There's no doubt about it. Well, mate, it's nearly time for me to grab another beer, so I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for tuning in and watching us for Beers in the Shed. I've absolutely loved doing these episodes and staying connected with you guys and hearing your questions come through, because we're getting so many questions, and just being able to be on YouTube to have this two-way stream where we can communicate with each other. Graham, I love annoying you, mate, every week, so I think we should make this a little bit of a regular occurrence. If I think so too, week, mate. Tune in.
I think so too. And look, to make it easy on folks at home, let's really start using these hashtags. So we got 4-wheel drive 24/7 fails, 4-wheel drive 24/7 tips, and of course 4-wheel drive 24/7 rigs. If you use one of those hashtags, or maybe you can combine all three. You've got a really nice rig, you've just totally cooked it into a river, but here's a tip to get it out. You might use all those hashtags in one go, but please start using those hashtags because it makes it so much easier for us to find.
And remember, this is the one-stop shop for all the content. We're going to be bringing it to you 24/7. We're not going to slow up on the content. Just because we're in isolation doesn't mean we're not going to be bringing you the best content. And this week we have a really cool test that we filmed some time ago where I did mud terrains versus all-terrain tyres. Now that's probably the biggest question you get asked when you're looking for new tyres. What do I go, mud tyres or all-terrains? Well, we put it to the test. And the results will probably shock you. So this Thursday, and we've also got a stack of really cool content coming up, including a really tough trip to the Waddingans in New South Wales that was filmed some time ago as well. So that's some really cool content to look forward to. And I can't wait to show that out because holy heck, those tracks, mate, they are full on.
Yeah, mate, she's not a place to take the faint-hearted. The Waddingans, I tell you, I had to change my undies a few times out there. It is one heck of a spot to go wheeling. But for now, mate, I'm going to sign off because as you can see, I need a beer top-up. I'll catch you back in the shed about this time next week.
Yeah, cheers, mate. And everyone out there, make sure you stay safe. And we'll see you again next week.
Yoo-hoo!